We do 12 single family properties in 12 months. And it's find them, acquire them. The physician gets 100% equity in these things. We renovate them. We get them rented up with a great property management team. We're screening the tenants, all of that stuff. And then on the back end is the asset management piece, showing you the dashboard that I use to say, okay, how is this asset performing?
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor! 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 Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Today's episode was fantastic with my friend Brett Riggins with Physician Wealth Systems. Brett is not a physician, but he has a ton of experience in the real estate space and has been helping physicians invest in real estate for many years. He's built out this incredible system where he helps you buy 12 single-family homes in 12 months in a high cash flow market in Memphis, Tennessee. He's got all the systems, all the experience, and all the expertise to help you get started investing in real estate. Talk about how important it is to have that foundation. We talk a lot about, most importantly, how important it is to network and be in the right rooms with folks, whether that's masterminds, communities, or going to different events. And most importantly of all is utilizing the action muscle, taking action and getting started. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's episode with my friend, Brett Riggins. Brett Riggins, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. So excited to have you on tonight. It was an honor to be on your podcast. So excited to have you on the Physicians and Properties Pod today. Thanks for staying up late to record this episode. How are things going?
Never been better, man. I'm excited. It's been a long time coming. I'm just excited to share whatever I can, kind of from that outsider's perspective in the world of real estate and working with physicians. So thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. For folks who don't know yet, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
No, absolutely. For a small fee. I mean, I may have to ask my age. No, I'm just messing with you. I started my path in Michigan, Southwest Michigan. And man, I've been in real estate almost 20 years now. I went to school for architectural engineering, construction management engineering, kind of mess around with the guitar. I've got a guitar hanging here on the back. So that kind of strung things out. But all along, it's been about renovations and construction and design. My world was kind of mixed with that real estate piece. I think it was in '07, perfect timing. I bought my first house. And that was an amazing journey of having none of the right people around me, nobody doing what I wanted to do. But I had that action bug. I took action, and that just morphed into some experiences that we could dive into, learned all the wrong things to do. Started off as a fix and flip, ended up holding it. Everybody knows what happened but that journey, people call it a tax or people call it a tuition, and it was something to come. I think it was in like 2015, 2016, we went full into real estate investing. It was fix and flip type of stuff. We got into wholesaling. We were doing this nationwide. At one time, I had 30 employees doing this. It was way more chaos than I wanted in my life. But again, it was just pushing me down that path, Alex, somewhere that I wanted to go, and I needed to learn these things along the way. And that journey actually led me to working with physicians, because we worked with physicians on debt loans, debt relationships as private lenders. And ultimately, it spawned the idea of how can I pass or move some more of this opportunity onto the physician based off of what we've created. That was the birth of Physician Wealth Systems, where we were actually we're building turnkey real estate investment businesses for physicians and high-income earners. It's not just turnkey properties, it's the whole thing. So all the way back to that first property that I bought wrong, in the wrong place, the wrong time, I put the wrong tenants in it, the pain, the years of tears and burning energy, all that's put into the place now where we're building these turnkey businesses for other people.
That's awesome. I think a few things that were super important. One, most importantly, you took action. Probably number two, you stuck with it, even as things did go wrong, which is hard to do. What are some things, Brett, during that initial time, or some of those wrong things that you did that you remember from the initial first deal in '07?
Everything, Alex, every single thing was wrong in that scenario, minus the action. Finding the house and then thinking, hey, is this a deal? I tell everybody the outside in approach. That's the way I was taught many years after that, where I'm finding the right area, the right place, the right people around me, and all ultimately coming down to the house. Then the biggest piece was it was a house, and then, I think this is going to be good. That was a big piece of where everything spawned from there. Obviously, a few people, I guess, predicted what was happening in '08. That was a huge fall, and the school system actually closed up. Like, it just got bad. I actually held on to this property, and by holding on to it, I thought it was just going to clean out the trash, cut the grass, and sell it. It was not like that, but I held on to it, and I was able to do some more wrong things, which was not screening tenants, chasing bad money with good money after putting up with bad tenants. It was just difficult. I didn't know how to charge for rent. I didn't know anything about lease agreements. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to screen tenants. There was so much to it, but ultimately, again, action, persistence, and just keep driving through. You're going to either pay that tax or call it tuition, whatever you want. And that's where you learn.
How did you keep going after '07? How did you keep that persistence, that motivation to keep going in real estate after so many things went wrong?
I'm just holding the perspective. For me, that was just one property, Alex. I mean, I've talked with people that had hundreds of houses at that time and lost so many properties. With me and my little tiny world of one house, I didn't know any better. It was just a piece of the puzzle. I'm an optimist to my core and say, okay, I got it this time. I got it this time. I got it this time. So me not knowing any different really keeps me driving forward.
What did that look like for you, Brett, going from that first house in '07, ultimately scaling to 30 employees? How was that leap? How did that go for you?
Great question. Expanding my association, investing in myself, and in that journey with my wife as well, too. I mean, we're partners in everything that we do. Really, that biggest leap forward, that inflection point is when we spent on ourselves that first time to learn all these things, to learn what books we needed, to learn what were the pieces of our investment team. It was with a group called Fortune Builders, actually. I've met so many other people that have good stories with Fortune Builders. Some have maybe not so good stories, but ours was obviously we got out of it what we put into it, but we made that large investment in ourselves to then start building systems, start looking at this as a business. And it's no longer, Alex, what Brett could do, because I was coming from the hands-on world, being a contractor, and I can do all of this, but I think we all fall victim to that, where we're not looking at it as a business. Biggest piece was investing in ourselves and then begin to surround ourselves with the right people, expanding our associations.
As you go kind of from I do to we do to they do, as that spectrum of business and expansion happens. And each step of that is really difficult. Like we're in the kind of I do, we do phase of our businesses, and very much looking forward to the they do aspect and bringing folks in and scaling and going from there. It's a fun journey, and each leap is different and difficult in its own way. But I think something that you said that was really important is investing in yourself, not being afraid necessarily, and maybe you were at the time, but being willing to invest in yourself, put some capital, put some skin in the game, get in the right rooms with the right people, network, mastermind with those folks. And that led to so much growth for you in the future. I don't know what you spent for Fortune Builders, but I would imagine you certainly made your money back.
I will happily say it too, because it was a massive investment in our life. And at that point, we may not even have had that money. It was 50 grand. And it's mind blowing when we look back at that point in my life. And my wife was a teacher. She was a teacher for 16 years, a fourth grade teacher. I was with a design build firm, a small mom and pop type shop. We were comfortable, but we were really nowhere where we thought we could, hey, where does this 50 grand going to come from? And then where does this time come from? Because I'm putting 50 grand into this educational system. I've got to go through these classes. I've got to go to these masterminds. I've got to do all this. When or how in the world is all this going to work? I love throwing that out there because some people like to guard or protect what they're investing in themselves, or what they're spending on masterminds, or how they're making this stuff happen. I just love throwing that out there.
I think it's so important. I've been in the same mastermind called the War Room, which is for military investors, mostly in real estate, for 4.5 years now. I was lucky I got in early. It was only $600 a year, and you paid lifetime. So I'm set $600 forever. But even if it was $5,000 to $7,000 a year, it would 100% be worth it 10 times over. I mean, that mastermind and the connections there and the partnerships there have made me a millionaire. And I don't mean that to brag in any way. It just, that has happened and expedited growth so much faster than what would have happened if I was just by myself, refusing to spend a few $1,000s or more in education, and was just trying to figure it out by reading books and listening to podcasts. It's really hard. The information's there, but the implementation is the hardest part in a mastermind, or that community, the networking, getting in the rooms with the right people is so important. And I personally, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I like being the dumbest person in the room, because that means that I'm growing, and that means I'm learning and surrounding myself with people who are better than me. And so it's just super important. I'm happy to hear that worked out. $50,000 is a lot, but worth it. It got you where you are here and where you are now. Super important. So folks are listening and kind of on the fence about joining any sort of mastermind community. Of course, vet it, but it's worth it. Absolutely.
That's a challenge. And I know that hangs up some people, Alex, is like this age that we're in, the speed of information, how we can set up marketing systems. And it's tough because there are so many gurus out there doing this. And that is a hang up, I think, for a lot of people because it's grown so fast and education platforms. And that is difficult. But don't let that hang you up from taking the steps that you need to take. Just like you say, vet it. What's going on with it? Who else has done it? What else can I do to learn more about that?
Sure. This is my opinion, but I think that we're probably headed towards the time where courses are kind of going to cease to exist and not be as important. And really mastermind, community, implementation, those sorts of things are going to be way more important and way more valued than just kind of your one-off course. I'll be honest, a lot of the courses I've bought, I've never finished, and I'm not the only one. So that accountability piece is what's missing. And I think masterminds do that quite well, or communities like Fortune Builders, Abundance, et cetera. They do that so well. So happy to hear that for you, Brett. Of course, that initial hurdle of the cost of joining Fortune Builders was probably a big hurdle, but what do you think was like the next mindset shift that unlocked the scale that then came after for you?
The first book that stood out to me was Gerber's, I think it's Michael Gerber, EMIS. That was that shift where it's like, okay, like I had said before, it's no longer what can Brett do? What can I do in this process? Because that was basically like buying myself a job in my brain, the way that I was putting this out. So I can do this, I can do this, I can figure this. But when I had to step back and realize that I need to create systems and processes in order to remove myself from being shaped and just perfectly matched to make sure that I was trading my time for money. This was a big step, a big mindset shift for us, was to, hey, how can we figure this out to where we're creating the systems and processes to remove ourselves? And that triangle in that book, to get to that top letter, that E, I think it's E, M, and T. The T is the technician, trading time for money. And the manager in the center is you're still trading time for money, but you're managing other people doing that. That E on top is the entrepreneur piece. That was the big piece. How can I get to that step? And the mindset shift that it takes to get there. Now we're understanding with the systems and processes, building the teams around us to make sure it's not requiring my own hands to get these things done.
That's fantastic. I think about kind of the medical school residency attending model and all the training that we experience. It's similar to that. Like, how can we take care of patients? We need that whole team. We need to effectively manage that whole team. But like, we're the quarterback. We're at the top of the pyramid. Physicians all the time come and talk to me, and they're like, one, really worried about, well, what happens if the market goes sideways and I lose my investment on a house? Well, chances are, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, for example, you're probably going to be able to cover the cost of the house, or you'll be okay. You'll be able to pick up a couple extra shifts and cover that. But that action muscle and just getting started is so important to lead to growth down the road. The other thing is, if you're a physician and you've already gone to med school and you've already done residency, you've done all this training, I feel like we're really well suited to be entrepreneurs because we know how to handle stressful situations, complex situations, manage all these moving pieces, manage people semi-well, and go from there. It gives physicians a leg up. I know you have 168 episodes or so now on Real Estate Mogul MD, your podcast. You've talked to a lot of docs. Have there been any themes like in regards to that, or hesitations or fears to getting started that seems to come up quite commonly for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing, just bouncing back to that last comment, was the house piece. Given your acquisition equation, you're buying something, it is very unlikely that you're going to lose that as long as you've got your checklist in place, you've got your insurance, you're doing this. It's a real tangible asset. Nobody's going to take that away from you. The insurance provides us or mitigates that risk for things that are outside of our control. That's different in this asset class. There are some other types of investments, obviously in syndications and different things where, yeah, it's poof, it's gone just like the stock market. But that was just one thing. Then the other thing is, no matter what you do to become that millionaire, and by the way, congratulations for hitting that and running that. So that first time you run your personal financials, you hit that net worth, that is like, wow, I did it.
Thank you.
But once you get there, even though that number may change on that paper, it could go away. But what you have, what it took, who you became to get there, that will never go away. Yeah. Nobody will ever take that away from you. It was Alex from Mosey talking about investing in yourself, because nobody's going to take that away from you. So what you have is what it takes to go get it again. That's really important too. Back to the question about these common blocks that I hear when I'm speaking with physicians. Some of it is, I think the first thing that I really loved about the podcast is being able to open up and talk and not be sales and being able to learn. Not the show coming on. I'm sure you've had guests on that's like, man, that's an awesome conversation. So getting past that, because I feel like we're so guarded out front on the idea that somebody's trying to take something from me. And absolutely, there are definitely people out there that are going to take things from you. But the ability to discern those who are out to get something for you instead of from you is a big change that can happen, because then you can go and openly discuss things and you can expand your associations beyond medicine and get away from tail type investing to learn more for yourself, because the relationships that I've built with physicians as a real estate investor are critical, not only to my growth, but for their growth as well too. Kind of creating an environment or being in an environment where you can speak freely, the big thing. And you can speak freely about money too, because we got to be able to talk freely about money, because we got to talk freely about taxes. It's awesome to make money, but it's even better to keep it. Just creating those scenarios where we can speak freely and we can be in trustworthy circles to have these open conversations, because a lot of the stuff that we find is the similar situations that a lot of other people are going through.
Absolutely. It's relatable. And every physician probably has felt some degree of burnout and some degree of stress for the job, and a thought of like, oh, what would this be like if I had a degree of financial freedom that I could work less or see less patients or work less shifts. And it's possible. It's absolutely possible. And that's what we're here to share. I think having that abundance mindset, and that's something that you've always displayed so well, is that abundance mindset. There's plenty of deals out there for everyone. There's plenty of different asset classes out there. Even within assisted living, for example, there's huge opportunity. But it's not like I'm not going to keep my cards to my chest. I'm going to try and give as much as I possibly can. I personally believe that's the way to do it. And then that ask, or then that's going to come back tenfold. And that's just how things work. I know you've seen that as well. I'm sure it's so fun, like you said, to have a podcast, get to network with amazing people. It's the greatest networking tool I think that exists, is having a podcast and getting in the room with people that you couldn't otherwise. Most importantly, being able to share that conversation with other folks to learn and walk through that journey with you and learn from the struggles, but also learn from the wins as well. Podcasts really are a great opportunity to do that, a great medium to do that.
The other thing I would add to that question that I see a lot too, Alex, is this time and energy piece. Speaking of coming from the life of a physician, I've only taken in from conversations, but I could imagine, I do feel I'm a high performance type personality. I've created machines that eat me, that eat my time, that steal me from my family. I've lived that similar path, but now on the path that I'm at now, I'm total life by design. So happy, so blessed, absolutely beautiful. But getting there, the time and the energy it takes to do that. As a physician, you are an amazing learner. You've gone through school, you've gone through additional training, and you're focused on this path. Don't let that stop. Like Jim Rohn says, don't be a lazy learner. You should be able to pivot right to the point and educate yourself in real estate and take that next stop, because there are so many opportunities, given the right associations, given the right mastermind, to mitigate or reduce the amount of time and energy that it does require to make that leap into the game. There's so many different asset classes. You've got a remarkable one that you're specialized, that you do quite a bit in the assisted living type stuff. So that one, syndications, you can even, on the limited partnership, you got to vet the jockey, you got to put the moves in, you got to do some stuff. But once that's up, that there's very little time that needs to go into that. There's opportunities out there to remove those two biggest things, the time and the energy, to learn and burn to get to your next point. That's another one of those hangups.
It's true. Time's the most valuable resource. We talk a lot about like return on income, but I would say return on time and return on energy are equally as important. You got to figure out, what do you like to do? What do you like to invest in? How active do you want to be, or how passive do you want to be? That's going to impact how much time you're putting in, how much energy you're putting in. You got to figure out what matches.
I put this in my mind was speaking about this, the 3 C's. You got capital, absolutely, with early on in your career. You don't have any capital. The second one is control. How much control do I want of the deal? Do I want to be an active where I've got more, or do I want to be a passive where I've got less control? And then the third one is commitment. How much time can I put into this? So those 3 C's, if you think about them in a circle, Alex, you've probably seen that one if you've ever hired a contractor. I want it good, cheap, and fast. They don't all 3 come together. Very similar with those 3 C's of the investment thing too, the capital, the control, and the commitment. Just picking and choosing that right one, or I would say, and leveraging the right people people around you to pick up those other spots of the circles that you don't have.
And the return on time piece, also looking at it from the perspective of bringing the right network or bringing the right people in to cut down the amount of time that it takes you to get that investment is so important. And I think often gets missed too of like, hey, what if this leads me to buying my first rental property 6 months sooner? Okay, well now I've got 6 months more appreciation, 6 months more of tax benefits, 6 months more of cash flow too. Gets missed as well of like, oh, I don't want to pay for this course or this mastermind or whatever, when really like, hey, just that 6 months of savings probably paid for all that you've spent for the mastermind. It's just something to think through, a different framework and a way to think about it. Brett, how did you get started working with physicians? And another follow-up question that I wanted to make sure I didn't forget is you mentioned your life by design, the wife being on board and a partner with everything. How did you go from 13 employees and a lot of scale to then kind of dialing that back to a life by design for you?
A lot of tears, a lot of pain, a lot of money lost. So yeah, great questions. The physician piece was those relationships that we had built working with physicians as private money lenders. I've also helped other people now because as we began to leverage private money, we were building up these, I call them bubbles of capital. That obviously gave us the opportunity then to lend out too. So I've lent money, I've borrowed millions, I've paid millions in interest out. It's an amazing process, but that's how we started connecting with physicians. And Alex, I always heard, how can we get deals like this? How can I get equity in these deals? And as a fix and flip, sorry, man, you can't have my equity. That's how I'm feeding my family. But along those lines came this really a couple of years ago. Things were switching, things were pivoting. And every time I got a house deal in a new market, I was paying money to set up basically a new company with dispositions and walking the property and all of this stuff. And I say, why am I doing this? I'm spending money. I'm going out and doing this. This is the perfect opportunity for me to offer this to physicians, to high income earners, where I can just plug them directly into Connect Homebuyers, this company. And that is where Physician Wealth Systems was born, because now I can do this. We do 12 single family properties in 12 months, and it's find them, acquire them. The physician gets 100% equity in these things. We renovate them. We get them rented up with a great property management team. We're screening the tenants, all of that stuff. And then on the back end, Alex, is the asset management piece, showing you the dashboard that I use to say, okay, how is this asset performing? It's the entire process, again, to set it up so it's a business. It's a landlord. You are running the business. And that's everything I touched needs. If there's a purpose, there better be a procedure. That's a big piece. And how we went to life by design and that journey is fascinating. The more that I learned about myself, the things that I'm not good at, the things where I was struggling. We were spending 6 figures a month in marketing. It was a lot. My wife and I just watched so much money go out the door. It just constantly went out and was absorbing my time. Like I was telling you, I've created a machine that was just eating my time and pulling me away from my family. It was tough. And I could do that working for somebody else. So why would I be doing that working for myself? Ultimately, in that journey, we're just blessed with things lining up to say, okay, we're streamlining stuff. We're breaking down. I don't want to do a solution where it requires so many people. And it really led us down to streamlining completely. I don't have any employees now. I have location freedom. I have time freedom. I have all of these things and happy, and I'm making more now than I have ever made. It's so much more streamlined than it ever was before. It's just being able to focus on what matters most to you, what's bringing you the most value. Like we're saying, that abundance mindset, Alex, is that's where I'm bringing so much more value to everybody else. Is when those things aligned, it just opened up everything.
I think about the kind of light and heavy, thinking about what's light and what's heavy, offloading what's heavy, keeping what's light. And you did that. You figured out, hey, this machine is eating me up. I got to figure out how to streamline it. I got to figure out to make it light, figure out what I love doing again, and get more time with the folks that matter most, which is family. We've all felt similar in the medical system too, of like, hey, this feels really heavy right now and it's eating up my time. How do I mitigate that? How do I adjust that? Sometimes that might be financial freedom. Sometimes that might be having the willingness to cut back or stand up for yourself in clinic and say, I'm not seeing any more patients, or maybe that's quitting the job altogether. I think that's awesome and incredibly relatable to all physicians as well. Brett, what does, if you don't mind me asking, kind of physician wealth system? So you mentioned 12 homes in 12 months, which is amazing. And you're the only employee. How do you do that? And what does that look like? If I'm a physician, I want to get started with physician wealth systems. What does that process look like? What markets, what returns, whatever you'd be willing to share, I think would be.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And that's the coolest part part of this, completely transparent. Everything is always completely transparent. How do we do that? My wife and I are the only formal employees that we have. I have an independent contractor that I partner with for my acquisition piece. And then from there, man, the integrations, the automations, the systems, the processes, that's what we leverage to get this done. We also leverage our power team as well, too. In the market that we're in, currently, Memphis is our market. I picked up on a couple of different markets, and this one, from that same outside-in approach, it wasn't, oh, let's go with this. I think I can do this. There was a definite and continuous study on why we have that market. But I got what I call boots on the ground in that market. It got legs. We started moving. That power team is the other piece of the contractors piece. The property management piece is massive. Having that is so important. It's not only just having a great relationship to take care of an asset as through the life of the asset, but how are we projecting numbers? How are we knowing areas? How are we knowing the right places to get the right tenants to have that kind of stuff? So the property management team is huge. I'm licensed in a couple of states as a real estate agent. So we actually plug in to the MLS and we're aggregating data from the MLS. I'm running a platform that allows me to pull that data in, filter it all out. About 5 to 7 properties come in for the acquisition manager each day that we would write offers on. My offers are easy. All I got to do is click a button and it drafts the whole offer. The follow-ups are all button clicks, sends emails. We track that all the way through acquisitions, all my transactions, the assets, all those properties are all tracked on that same platform. The platform I use is called Airtable. Currently, absolutely love it. So, man, what that looks like from the outside coming in is hold on to your pants because we're going to get after it. We're going to put 12 on the table in 12 months is getting after it. But the reason it is possible is because of the proven systems. This is not the first time through. This is not the second time through. Going full cycle on these things, owning, being an investor myself, understanding the pains of stabilizing properties. What does it feel like to put cash out or not having cash in? When am I going to get my cash back? I can relate to those instances and stay focused on perspective. That's the biggest piece when we're looking at long-term rentals, maintaining that long distance perspective. That's another thing that does pop up all the time when you look at it. Man, what am I going to do with $200 a month, Alex? I'm not going to get rich off of this. No, you're not. It's the perspective. We'll stack these things up. $200 a month is our net, I call net adjusted. I've got my 10% reserves. I'm going to start throwing a lot of numbers out at you. My reserves I'm pulling out. So I've got 5% vacancy, 5% maintenance. On top of all the other costs, this is what I call the net adjusted. My $200 per month per door is a minimum cash flow. I've got 12% net adjusted return on investment on our finance deals as well, too. So you could take those numbers and put them up against your other investments and say, hey, is this work? The cherry on top is the stackable returns when we talk about single family residential properties. On a finance deal, I have principal pay down on top of that cash flow. I also have depreciation. We can't depreciate the land, but we can depreciate the house. I'll run this on a straight line depreciation, 27 and a half years. And we're looking at a stacked first year stabilized. This is going to be the lowest. It just creeps up from them. The first year stabilized at 30% return on investment. That has nothing to do with the equity. On top of that, Alex, on top of this, I'm not going to get rich off $200 a month, is all of these pieces stacked in. And that equity piece is huge because in 2023, we averaged a little over $18,000 in equity. This is air equity, the forced equity we're putting in these properties per property. If you look at that times 12, then we're putting a number on that personal financial statement that's moving you closer to where you want to be. Ultimately, these are long-term solutions with long-term people. We're not flipping these. I'm not going to do it in a year and turn them. Ultimately, you could, though, with those equity positions, you could flip these things. And it's with the way the rates are going down now, I'm smiling because we've got these things. It's all about the acquisition. If I put something in paper at 8% interest, and now I can get a DSCR loan, a 30-year fixed loan, I'm seeing that 6% at 70% LTV, I'm just jacking my cash flow up, you know?
It's an interesting opportunity in the market and a lot of potential as rates are likely, if I had a crystal ball, likely going to continue to drop over the next year and a half. And that's only going to improve cash flow and make those numbers look even better. Man, that's exciting. Helpful for folks from kind of, hey, what does that process look like? A couple of questions off the bat that I think folks would be interested in is one, how do you guys make money in regards to physician wealth systems? And then do you ever do any like less than 12 deals for folks? If someone's like, hey, I really want to get started, but I have enough capital for 3 deals, is that something that you'd be interested in?
Great question. Again, transparency is so key because I talk about creating or maintaining these platforms where we can have open, clear communication, consistent communication is huge. The transparency piece is huge. When we get into this, like I said, I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you. Now this, I live, I eat, breathe, really sleek this stuff, so I can throw them out there. The way that we make money on this, there's a consulting fee out front. We've got a 12 property package, and we'll target that 12 months to do 12 properties. That's going to come down to deployable capital. To do that 12 properties in 12 months, the minimum on that's going to be 500 to 600,000, and that would include the consulting fee that goes out front of this thing. The other way is to do a 3 property package, and that may take 6 months. It may take 12 months, depending on the amount of deployable capital. That deployable capital is basically, what do I have? Is it off of life insurance? Can I borrow against that? Is it a 401k? Is it cash? Is it my pulling out of stocks? It's where can I get that to what I call wash and repeat on the BRRRR strategy: buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat to get that cash back out of there. That's where our returns are jacked up. That's where we get those stackable returns. So that 3 property process is there, but ultimately I'm not doing this a lot. I'm not working with a lot of people. You can imagine there's a lot that goes into these. And I want to make sure that, like I said before, I'm bringing way more value than I'm getting myself. I'm only going to be working with 2 more people this year doing this. It's all about the relationship. I always get asked too after the fact. Before I got asked, hey, how can we get equity in these things? But now in the last couple of years, I've been asked, hey, Brett, why aren't you keeping equity in these things? I tell everybody the equity is in the relationship because that's the foundation that we're building. And then from there, we're moving into multifamily deals. And the connections that we have on these podcasts are amazing. We had an event last week or a couple of weeks ago where people were coming from multiple different states coming in just to chat with us. And those opportunities and these people, because again, the equity in the relationship, these guys are on it. I've learned so much from them, but now we can build this community together and grow faster together.
Absolutely. Relational equity, super important. I love that. Brett, if you don't mind sharing too, what does kind of your portfolio look like in terms of rentals and real estate and so forth, if you're willing to share that?
I'm currently about just right around 20 units, and they are mainly single family. I've got a couple mixed use commercial buildings that we do what they call midterm, which is 30-day minimums. That's due to the stipulations inside those municipalities. We've got some of those commercial spaces obviously rented out. We've got the single families. We've got 1 4-plex. We've got a duplex, some of these things. And these are mainly in the Southwest Michigan area. We've got some in the Memphis area. We own through our Roth IRAs as well too, which is an interesting way to own real estate. Learning that path was fun too. This year, we are going to acquire our first multifamily property. I always put this out there in the air. If anybody looking to sell that 20 to 50 unit, you need to call Brett because Brett is ready to rock and roll on one of those properties. That's the next move for us in this journey. We've been underwriting quite a few of the bigger properties that come through. What a blessing that is to be able to, 1, have the time, 2, have the knowledge to know what questions to ask, 3, having the relationships to where you're seeing these things. But that's just getting us to that 4th step, which is, hey, it's time to move into the multifamily.
What do you like about multifamily going forward?
Scalability. Just because I would say we would have worked together, Alex, I mean, we did 12 properties together. I don't press anybody to do anything, but I wouldn't encourage you to do more than that. I don't think that it's a scalable solution in the long run. I always tell everybody it's a great foundational step to build a relationships, to build a team, to understand what the processes are, because you can learn a lot in that single family that could be applied all the way across the board. Multifamilies, rental, storage, mobile homes. There's so much that learned, and it's easier to get in. It's easier to get out. Mistakes are typically smaller. It's just a great foundational piece. But from there, moving into multis, I do like that, the scalability piece of it. Ultimately, when you're blessed of creating these bubbles of capital, you've got to have somewhere to put them so you can offset that income and use the depreciation. So that's a path. And there's so many other different paths and different ways of writing stuff off. And I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations about that with the oil and gas, car wash, these different kind of things to depreciate. But ultimately, it's moving that capital from the active bucket into the passive bucket and ending up where all that capital is in the passive bucket so we can depreciate it with real estate.
It's a great strategy. I was thinking back, you mentioned your Roth IRA and using that to invest in real estate. We just had Karen Hall on the podcast, who's from UDirect IRA, and she was amazing. And gosh, it was blowing my mind, like listening to her talk about how you can use these retirement accounts to buy alternative assets and how beneficial that can be. A lot of docs have 401ks or they have IRAs and they're sitting there probably in mutual funds, which have really high fees, and the return probably really isn't that good. Then you compare that to some of these real estate transactions or the 30% stack for your deals. And man, what a cool opportunity to leverage your retirement accounts and set you up for future success in an asset class that can be quite passive and go from there. Oh man, real estate's beautiful.
There's no such thing as truly passive. So we got to want it. We got to work it. There are ways that we can leverage these other resources to make it as passive as possible.
Passive income is a misnomer. Spectrum, I think, is a better way to think about it. If anyone knows of something that's absolutely, truly passive, that requires no work and gets great returns, let Brett and I know, because we also have capital for that instead of just the multifamily.
We might want to call the police on that person selling that.
Brett, you said you're working with 2 more docs this year. If folks are interested in working with you for Physician Wealth Systems or learning more about what you do or reaching out to you, what's the best way for folks to connect?
physicianwealthsystems.com is the platform. And man, there's a resource page. Whether you're working with me or not, I think going there and checking out that resource page is so cool, because my blessing is being able to bring everything together. So it's not me. I mean, Physicians and Properties is on there, right? It's that community. Where can I go and find out and surround myself with the right people? On that resource page, I've got some of my colleagues that I've grown with in the fix and flip world, the coaches, the mindset pieces, a different podcast like the White Coat Investor. That's something, if you're listening to this podcast, I hope that you've listened to the White Coat Investor.
Please do.
There's so many little things that I'm collecting as I'm going that I think just building out the community. And again, it's abundance. That piece, physicianwealthsystems.com. You can definitely learn more about us and our team. And I've got case studies coming out. We're tracking everything, KPIs on everything. I absolutely love it. The case studies are there, but the resources are so cool to find other like-minded people, find other investment opportunities, triple net lease, multifamily. There's just so much cool stuff out there. Resource pages, we're squeezing it all in there together. And you can even get this guy right here,
Let's
the
go.
book. What a joy that was. There's so much cool stuff on there for sure.
You have a bunch of resources. Your newsletter too has been fantastic. And so folks should definitely sign up and get on the email list for that too. It's been very educational. What I really appreciate about your newsletter too is you make it simple and approachable for folks who maybe don't have that real estate background. And it's a way that feels really genuine and abundant. We've talked about a lot. I think abundance is probably the theme of this podcast. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for sending that out. It's a great resource for folks as well.
Just extending that last open arm too. So many people have those single family properties or have questions about real estate or, the accidental landlord piece. So many people are undercharging for rent. How do I even find rent? Is this a good area? There's so much out there that as a byproduct of what we're doing, we've collected this stuff and we're able to share it. Whether it's reaching out to you, Alex, reaching out to us, don't hesitate to ask. I pop into the group sometimes and just add some stuff in when I can. The funny thing is we'll open this up and say, okay, you can literally reach me directly and I would love to help you. How many people actually take action? They think about, oh, I've got this. I would really like to ask this question. And then maybe they just get busy or something and they don't do it. But the door is open to, again, share that value, share those opportunities. Because if somebody didn't do that with me, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Well, thanks for giving so much to the physician community. Thanks for everything, Brett. It's been a pleasure to get to know you, to be your friend, to watch things grow, and excited for the future for you, man.
Thank you so much. And the listeners out there today, go find either Spotify and Apple. Go and leave a review for this podcast. It's so helpful. And not just a review. It's got to be a 5-star review. Hook Alex up. Come on. He does an awesome job with the show. And stay tuned. We got to get together. We're going to do one of these events where we put some good people in the room for free.
Let's do it, man. That'd be awesome. Well, Brett, looking forward to it. Looking forward to having you on the podcast again here soon and hearing more about your journey. And with that, it's been Brett Riggins and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode, Physicians and Properties Podcast, signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.